Welcome back, 17 past the hour. Well, it is good to see that Newt Gingrich is defending Michelle Bachmann on the Huma Abedin allegations. It's just insane to see all these Republicans criticizing her for doing what is common sense, wanting to look into the Muslim Brotherhood influence on our own government. Now, I've told you before about this great series, 10-part video course online, The Muslim Brotherhood in America, The Enemy Within. You can find it at muslimbrotherhoodinamerica.com, put together by Frank Gaffney at the Center for Security Policy, where he is ahead of that great group, and he joins us now to give us his thoughts. Great to have you, Mr. Gaffney.
Janet, I am so sorry for not being with you earlier. I had a small fire on my hands and had to deal with it. Thank you for bearing with me.
Oh, absolutely. We're just so grateful that you have some time to spend with us. I have been so upset at how these Republicans have reacted. I think very unfairly. If you were to read these letters sent out by these congressmen, have you had the same reaction?
Well, I guess about 36 years of working in one capacity or another in Washington, Janet, I've got to tell you, I have never seen anything quite as scandalous, really, as what's going on here. And it's not just Republicans, in fairness. Some of these are Republicans who are taking shots at not just Michelle Bachmann. We ought to be clear. She's caught most of the spears, but it's actually four other members of Congress, Louis Gohmert, Trent Franks, Lynn Westmoreland, and Tom Rooney, who have also asked, as you say, the kind of question we expect them to ask. And they've asked them in a formal and entirely appropriate way of the people that are charged with answering these questions, namely inspectors general in these various departments. And what were the questions? The questions were, we have individuals, some of whom have been identified by name, drawing in part on the research that we did at muslimbrotherhoodinamerica.com, who are tied usually in myriad ways to the Muslim Brotherhood in America, who are now either on the government payroll in these various departments of state, justice, defense, homeland security, or the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, or are being used as advisors to those agencies, or at least as liaisons to the Muslim American community. The ties these individuals have suggest, they give rise, I should say, to a reasonable concern, at least, that maybe these people are trying to get the United States government to conform to the wishes of the Muslim Brotherhood. And then you've got all these examples of how it is doing so, and it's a perfect fit to, I think, at the minimum, ask members of Congress who have oversight responsibilities to seek formal inquiries into these kinds of questions. And for that, they have been subjected to the most egregious and in some cases just flat-out uninformed criticism, again, that I've experienced in these 36 years in Washington. And I find it appalling, and I'm so glad to hear people like you and I'm sure your listeners responding as I am in horror and anger at it.
Right. Well, and the reason I singled out Republicans, you're absolutely right. The Democrats are quite critical, but we expect that from them. I would expect somebody like Senator McCain, who's very smart and knows a lot, to be better informed on this and to know more what he was talking about. But here's a question, though. When they center on Huma Abedin, who has these family ties to the Muslim Brotherhood, yes, her father is deceased, but her mother is still alive. She was one of the founding members of the Muslim Sisterhood. How can that not be relevant? And if she really has no ties, and it's not just about her, but if she has no ties, couldn't the Secretary of State come out and say, we fully vetted her, she's fine? And that would be the end of it.
Well, she could, or the Inspector General could do that. The problem is that, of course, they can't, because she does have ties. You're right. Her late father was an employee of something, an organization funded by the main Saudi government arm for underwriting the Muslim Brotherhood called the Muslim World League. Her mother not only has been involved with the Muslim Sisterhood, but several other organizations, including one that is directly associated with a designated terrorist organization called the Union of Good. There are associations through her brother with the Muslim Brotherhood as well, who is in Oxford, England, in the Muslim Brotherhood Front organization there. These are the sorts of things that, just as a practical matter, given the guidelines that operate in the State Department, or at least are supposed to operate in the State Department, with respect to people having foreign associations, whether they're family members, whether they're personal in other ways, whether they're professional relationships, family or other associations that could compromise that person, should they be given a position of trust, let alone access to classified information, are generally understood to be disqualifying.
Right.
And that's the sort of thing that these members of Congress have asked about. The fact that everybody is focused on this one woman, Huma Abedin, who happens to be very, very importantly located in the office of the Secretary of State, shouldn't subtract us from the larger problem, of which this is really just one manifestation.
Right. Well, tell us how many people, I don't know if you can come down with a particular number, but aside from Huma Abedin, do you find any evidence of a large number or a significant number of people who may have questionable ties who are serving in important places in the government?
Let me make one point that I should have made perhaps at the outset, just so we're very clear about this. There are probably hundreds of people who happen to be Muslim who are serving in our government. I am not suggesting, nor do I have evidence, that all of them have ties to the Muslim Brotherhood.
Right.
That might be something that people should look at. We have recently seen a group of former Muslims write as many of them as they could find in the government and ask them, do they agree with or reject the practice of, or at least the legal latitude to kill apostates, people like them who are former Muslims. We've not seen any answers from those people as far as I can tell, and that's a little disconcerting. But the people that we've identified as problematic because you can very easily establish they have Muslim Brotherhood ties are, in addition to Huma Abedin, a man by the name of Rashad Hussain, who works in the White House. He is the president's envoy to the Organization of Islamic Cooperation.
Mm-hmm.
We have a woman who is his Islamic affairs advisor by the name of Dalia Mogahed. We have three other individuals, one of whom is simply being used, as I understand it, as a liaison to the Muslim American community, who has known and established ties to Hamas, a designated terrorist organization. His name is Kifa Mustafa, and two others who are advisors, Mohammed Majid, who runs the largest Muslim Brotherhood Front organization in the United States, the Islamic Society of North America, and Mohammed Eli Biari out of Texas, who is serving on the Homeland Security Advisory Council.
Wow.
So these are the kinds of people that we think you ought to start with.
Sure.
Their ties are obvious. Their roles, I think, are really problematic.
Well, it's interesting because when we talk about Michelle Bachmann, she's accused Keith Ellison, for example, the congressman from Minnesota, of having a long record of being associated with CAIR and the Muslim Brotherhood. That's actually true. Although he denies it, but he, for example, and Robert Spencer wrote about this, Nihad Awad, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, co-founder of CAIR, was doing fundraising for Ellison. He was speaking at his events, wasn't he?
It's even worse than that, Janet. Ellison was doing fundraising for Nihad Awad.
Oh, man.
Nihad Awad is running an organization that we know was established by the Muslim Brotherhood for the purposes of waging political warfare and raising funds for that designated terrorist organization, Hamas. It is an unindicted co-conspirator in the Holy Land Foundation trial, and anybody who has anything to do with it and who turns around and tells you they don't know anything about the Muslim Brotherhood or these people don't have anything to do with that is lying.
Let me ask you a question, because you know all this stuff off the top of your head better than I do. Isn't the FBI, after the Hamas funding trial, wasn't it the case that the FBI would no longer have ties with CAIR?
Yes.
Okay, but CAIR is like this, go-to place, not just for the media, but the Obama administration.
Yes.
How is that possible?
It is possible because I would argue of the kind of influence operations that have been systematically run, not just against this administration, but against the Bush administration before it and the Clinton administration before it, by people like the ones I've mentioned and organizations and others who are associated with them, some of whom, like CARE, are very demonstrably Muslim Brotherhood, some of whom are a little less so, but who nonetheless are deeply aligned with and sympathetic to the Muslim Brotherhood's agenda. And let's be clear what that is, Janet. The Muslim Brotherhood's mission statement with respect to the United States is to destroy Western civilization from within by our hands.
Right.
That's a direct quote.
Right.
Now, that's what we're up against, and for people to turn a blind eye to this civilization jihad, as the Muslim Brotherhood calls it, that they're waging, not the violent kind of al-Qaeda and so on, they'll get to that in due course, but what's really pre-violent in character, stealthy, subversion from within, that's what we're up against. That's what Michelle Bachmann and her colleagues have called attention to. That's why they are being assailed as they are, is to shut down the investigations we need into this kind of subversive activity within our wire.
Well, you're absolutely right about that. I want to once again recommend the Muslim Brotherhood in America, The Enemy Within at MuslimBrotherhoodinAmerica.com. You really need to watch that. It is very scary and sobering, but it's important information. I know how much work you do with so many important people, Mr. Gaffney. Have you been able to educate some of these Republicans in particular who have been speaking out against the call for these investigations and sort of say, you guys, you're a little misinformed?
Well, quite candidly, I was late getting on the phone with you because I was doing just that.
Oh, good.
With
That's
one of
great.
them, and I hope it had some effect.
Good.
I think the point is they need to hear not just from me. They need to hear from people like you and obviously your listening audience and their constituents. And I would start with John Boehner, the Speaker of the House.
Right.
He needs a briefing on what we're up against in terms of the civilization jihad before he makes any other statements, let alone perhaps acts in a punitive fashion against the people who have raised these legitimate and necessary questions.
Good. I'm so happy to hear that. You can be, doing that all you want. I'm thrilled to be hearing that because you were one of the first people I thought of when this whole story broke. As I said, I hope Frank Gaffney can get to all these people and get them to watch this series that you have online, which is such an important thing for every American to watch. I want to give it another plug. It's MuslimBrotherhoodinAmerica.com. Frank Gaffney from the Center for Security Policy. And keep up the good work, Mr. Gaffney. I'm so grateful you guys do what you do.
Well, thank you, Janet. You make it all possible with your help.
Well, thank you so much. God bless you. I really appreciate your being with us. We'll be back on the Janet Mefford Show. Don't go away.